I never wanted to be here. Not in this red vest, not in these long aisles under flickering lights, and definitely not in the graveyard shift at Target Kathmandu. But life doesn't hand out choices to people like me. I was a student once. Third semester in business administration at Tribhuvan University. I had plans, not just dreams, an actual roadmap. I wanted to work in finance, help companies grow, maybe even start my own someday. But those plans vanished the day my Ama's legs gave out. Rheumatoid arthritis, the doctor said, like it was some kind of sentence. The kind that doesn't just cripple the body. It shreds finances and spirits, too. We live in a 2-room flat in Chaba Hill, barely ventilated, with cracked walls and a leaky tap that never stops whining at night. My father died when I was 10. Since then, it's just been Amma and me. So when the pain got worse and her meds became monthly expenses we couldn't skip, I dropped out. My friends said I was stupid. Some teachers tried to convince me to stay. But what good is a degree if your mother can't walk to the toilet? Target paid just enough. It's a strange store in a place like Kathmandu, an American-style superstore, in the middle of old temples, narrow alleys, and momo stalls. The shelves are lined with Doritos, shampoos priced in dollars, and people who think carrying an iPhone means you matter. The place has air conditioning, motion sensor lights, and a PA system that plays American pop songs on loop. Still, most of the time, it smells like cheap sanitizer and something stale. I took the night shift because it paid slightly better and gave me daytime to cook, clean, and run to the pharmacy. Also, fewer people to deal with. Just the quiet hum of refrigerators and the occasional wanderer like Officer Ramesh Karki. He was always around. Late-night visits, a few dumb jokes, a packet of Lays, and casual talk about Arsenal's latest blunder. But people change, and when they do, they don't always give you a heads up. Sometimes they just walk through sliding doors one night and nothing is the same again. It was a Wednesday or maybe Thursday. I'd stopped tracking days. All I knew was it was 2:30 in the morning, and I was in the electronics aisle straightening, a stack of dusty Bluetooth speakers that never sold. The automatic doors hissed open. I looked up, expecting the usual. A security guard checking rounds, maybe a lost customer looking for imported cereal. But instead it was Officer Karki. Only this time he wasn't in uniform. No badge, no pressed shirt, just a half-buttoned flannel, slippers, and jeans. His hair was a mess, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days, or had drunk too much to notice. Something was off. His usual swagger was replaced with a kind of restless pacing. He smelled like whiskey and sweat. Not the faint stink of a man who'd had a drink, but the suffocating odor of someone drowning in it. "Where are the headphones?" he barked, louder than needed. I tried to stay calm. "Aisle 7, sir. Same place as always." He squinted at me. "No, the expensive ones, in the back." "There's no back stock," I said, truthfully. "Target Nepal runs tight inventory. What you see is all there is." "You think I'm an idiot?" His voice dropped. "I know how this place works. I should have called my supervisor. Should have pressed the silent alert button near the register." But I hesitated. Because he was still Officer Karki, right? The guy who told me funny stories about drunk tourists and corrupt bosses. The guy who once bought me a Coke when he saw me half asleep at 4 a.m. So I said, "I can show you the storage room, sir, if you want." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, you do that." My stomach tightened. There was something behind his eyes, not anger, paranoia, and something else, like he was waiting for a moment. I didn't know then that moment would arrive so quickly. That walking into that room meant walking into a cage. The storage room was always cold and quiet. Boxes of toothpaste, electronics, expired chips, most of it junk. The LED above flickered as we walked in. I turned around to explain there was nothing special back here. But he shut the door. Hard. Click. Lock. I froze. He was between me and the exit. "You think I don't know?" he said, eyes wild. "Sir, what? You've been watching me, writing things down, reporting. I haven't..." My voice cracked. His hand went to his waistband. I saw it. Black metal. A pistol, but not standard issue. Smaller, dirtier. "I see you every night. You Think I don't notice your looks, the whispers. My heart pounded. I could barely think. I raised my hands. Please, I don't know anything. I'm just here for the shift. He stepped forward. You didn't see me take anything? The iPhones, the SD cards, the hard drive last week? I had no clue what he was talking about. But now I understood. He'd been stealing, maybe more. And he thought I was a witness, or maybe he wanted someone to blame. My eyes scanned the room. Metal shelving rod, waist high, leaning near the wall. He took another step. You report me, I swear to God. I didn't let him finish. I grabbed the rod and swung hard. It caught his shoulder. He roared and stumbled, more shocked than hurt. That was enough. I bolted past him, slammed the emergency exit, and the alarm screamed through the building. For the first time in weeks, I didn't care if I lost my job. I just needed to live. They said I was lucky. Karki was arrested 2 days later. Someone at HQ had been suspicious. They found stolen Target goods, police evidence, even a missing person's cell phone in his tiny apartment in Kalanki. The media called it a rogue cop situation, said he had a breakdown, said justice had been served. But justice? That's not what it felt like. Target's corporate office in India sent a letter. Due to recent incidents, we are adjusting staffing needs. Translation, my hours were cut from 6 nights to 2. Too much bad press, my manager whispered. Customers feel unsafe. Unsafe? I felt that every time I clocked in. But no one asked me how I was. No counseling, no paid leave. Just a stern warning to avoid confrontation, and it didn't stop there. Some customers whispered when they saw me. A cop pulls a gun on me, I defend myself, and suddenly I'm violent. A cousin messaged me, you shouldn't have raised your hand to a government official. My uncle told my AA to make me quit, said I was inviting dirty karma. My mother still cries at night, not because she's ashamed, but because I look different now. I don't smile, I barely sleep. And her medicine? We had to skip a dose last week. Too expensive. I tried getting another job, restaurant, delivery, anything. But no one wants to hire the guy who attacked a police officer. Even if the case is closed, the story's alive in whispers, Karki. He's already out on bail, connections run deep here. Me? I get 200 rupees a week if I'm lucky. Every time a cop walks in, my hands tremble. Every time the doors slide open, I wonder if they've come back for me. I keep a pocket knife in my vest now. Not for the customers, not even for the cops. It's for that quiet fear that sits inside me, waiting to crawl out at the worst moment. Some nights I go to the rooftop during breaks and stare at the sky, at the blinking lights of planes above Kathmandu, flights headed to Doha, Dubai, Kuwait. I applied for 3 jobs in Qatar last month. Warehouse work, maybe driving, anything that gets me out of here. I know the risks. I've heard the stories. Bad bosses, fake contracts, passports taken away. But I also know what it's like to feel hunted in your own city. What happened in that storage room? It never left me. It's still there when I'm sweeping aisles, when I'm stacking soda bottles, when I hear a shout from behind and my whole body stiffens. And sometimes, late at night, I catch my reflection in the freezer glass, and I don't recognize the guy looking back. He's tired, older than 20, older than... His eyes aren't hopeful. They're watching for shadows. They built Target here like it was meant to be a bubble. Bright lights, clean shelves, American optimism. But the truth is, even inside all this imported shine, we're just trying to survive. I'm not a hero. I'm not even brave. I just want out. Because in Kathmandu, even the safest places aren't safe anymore. Before I ever heard the sound of blood dripping on linoleum, I was just another immigrant trying to hold things together. My name's Nikolai Petrov, though people here call me Nico. I came to Ireland from Dnipro, Ukraine, 2 years ago, when the bombs started falling. I was an architecture student. I had dreams, columns, bridges, beautiful things made with quiet hands. But war doesn't care about that. It took my home, my father, and nearly took my mother too. Cancer crept in during the chaos as if war wasn't enough. The chemo bills piled up. She stayed back in Poland with a relative who could care for her between treatments. I came here to earn euros working wherever I could. Graphic design gigs paid some, but not regularly, so I picked up night shifts at Target Hypermarket Cork. The graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mostly silence, shelves, and cold fluorescent lights. It wasn't bad. Not until it was. Target felt too big at night. Huge aisles that echoed. 3 of us covered the entire floor. Me, Sean O'Malley, and a third guy who rotated out every other week. Sean was younger, 23, sharp kid. Loved coding, hated the job. Always joked about quitting, but somehow kept showing up. We had routines. Sean restocked electronics. I handled grocery and seasonal. At night, Target felt like a world only we knew. We talked about football, about Dublin rent prices, even about the war sometimes. We weren't friends exactly, but we looked out for each other. There was comfort in that. The store was run down in places. Security cameras barely worked. The roof leaked during heavy rain. Most nights were quiet, uneventful. But then came that. Wednesday, 2:35 a.m., and I realized the worst horror isn't what bursts through the door. It's what's already inside, watching from above. It started with a cart, Sean's, half-stocked with phone chargers, boxed headphones, and a half-eaten protein bar, just left there, abandoned in aisle 14. At first I thought he was on a bathroom break or maybe stepped out for a smoke. But it was odd. He was always neat, methodical, never left stuff lying around. Then I noticed the trail of crisps on the floor, like someone had knocked over a display bag and dragged it toward the stockroom. I followed the trail. Step by step, dread rising like cold water around my legs. The air changed near the back, heavier, and then a smell, not quite rot, not yet, but metallic, sharp, like nicked skin or the inside of your mouth after biting your tongue. A smell that doesn't belong in a grocery store. The stockroom door was ajar, just enough to make it worse. Motion sensor lights should have kicked in, but inside, dark, dead dark. No humming bulbs, no rustling packaging, just silence. That's when I heard it. Schlick. Pause. Schlick. Methodical. Wet. I didn't move, didn't breathe. That sound was too human to be a leak, too intentional, like someone cutting meat. Slowly, I pulled out my box cutter. It was small, meant for cardboard, not people. But it felt like something to hold on to while my body locked in fear. Then I did something I can't explain even now. I flicked on the storage lights, and there he was, Sean, slumped against a pallet of plastic shamrocks and green glitter hats. Blood soaked his shirt, pooled under him, soaking the cardboard. His eyes, glassy, lifeless. His mouth was open like he'd tried to scream but couldn't get the breath. And standing over him, a man I'd never seen, wearing a stolen Target vest, calm, thin, like he'd been starved for weeks. A Stanley knife in his hand, blade wet. He looked at me and then he smiled. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, lungs punching at my ribs. I heard footsteps behind me. Soft at first, then faster, like he was pacing himself. Like he knew the layout better than me. I shot past aisle 10, dodged a fallen mop bucket by the cleaning section, and skidded past the shuttered Costa Coffee stand where we stored expired muffins. The emergency exit was ahead, just past the home goods aisle. My keycard was useless in emergencies, so I slammed the push bar. Alarm screamed. Red lights blinked above the door. But I didn't stop. I bolted into the garden center, pitch dark, filled with half-dead plants and rusted patio furniture. The air was damp. It felt like running through a grave. I could hear him, not shouting, not growling, just breathing, heavy, animal-like. I reached the far gate and vaulted over a broken hose reel. My Skoda Octavia sat in the corner of the car park, faded blue paint nearly blending into the night. I fumbled my keys, heard the crunch of gravel behind me, felt a hand claw at my jacket, ripping the shoulder seam clean off. I dove inside, slammed the door, locked it, hit the horn, once, Twice, he just stood there, thin, pale, breathing through his teeth, staring. Then he turned, walked toward the loading bay, disappeared. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They were too late for Sean. The Garda did their job, sort of. They found blood trails leading up to the ceiling crawl space, food wrappers, cans, an old sleeping bag. The man had been living above us, watching us. Every night. He wasn't even an employee. We never knew his name. Just that he'd posed as a janitor 2 months earlier, then vanished. Apparently he'd stayed right above us, watching through ceiling gaps, moving only when alarms were off. Target's response? A grief counseling session. 1. And a $75 voucher. As if that could erase Sean's blood from my memory. They shut the security footage down, said it was under review. But we all knew. They didn't want people to know how easily the cameras failed, how little they cared about us after dark. I quit the next week. But quitting didn't fix anything. Mom's chemo bills didn't stop. I had no job. Freelance work dried up fast. I used my last $800 to turn my tiny flat into a fortress. Locks, sensors, a cheap stun gun from some sketchy site. Still, every creak in the floorboards made me jump. Locals stared at me differently. Some called me that foreign guy who brought trouble. One man at the pub said I'd probably been in on it. Like being Ukrainian made me part of it. PTSD isn't loud, it's silent. Like hearing that slicing sound when buttering toast. Like checking under the bed even though you know better. Like seeing someone in a red vest and almost screaming. I couldn't even walk past Tesco without sweating. The only place I felt safe was in my car. And even then, I slept with my box cutter on the dashboard. I've changed. I lock the door 4 times every night. I sleep with a hammer under my pillow and a torch on my nightstand. I haven't touched my drawing tablet in months. Every night, I wake up at exactly 2:35 a.m. No alarm, just instinct. I sit up, gasping, listening. I don't hear footsteps anymore, but I feel them. In the walls, in the air, like he's still watching, like he never left. People moved on. Sean's name faded from headlines. Target called it an isolated incident. They reopened in 48 hours. No one ever answered the questions. Why Sean? How long had he been watching us? Why didn't the cameras record it? Why did Target scrub everything? Sometimes I think he's still out there. Not the man. The feeling. The knowing that safety is a lie we sell at the checkout counter. And behind every employee's smile is someone trying to pretend they aren't one bad night away from collapse. Me, I exist. That's the best I can say. But when the clock hits 2:35, I still sit up. And in the silence of my flat, I swear I still hear that wet, deliberate sound from the stockroom. Schlick, pause, schlick. I never thought my life would bring me to a graveyard shift in a superstore. Not after all the years in a suit, handling clients, building brands, pitching big ideas in boardrooms filled with stale coffee and artificial smiles. But layoffs don't care about pride. They just come, quietly, efficiently, and sweep you into the drain. My name is Marek Kowalski. I used to manage marketing for a mid-sized firm. I had a mortgage, a company car, even a gym membership I barely used. My wife, Zosha, is a teacher. Steady, practical, the kind of person who balances the checkbook to the last gross. When the company cut 60% of staff, I was on the wrong end of the spreadsheet. At first, I thought I'd bounce back. I updated my CV, called old contacts. But weeks turned into months. No calls, no interviews. Zosha told me we couldn't wait anymore. We had bills, rent, utilities, loans. She said, just take something, anything to keep us afloat. So I applied to Target Superstore on the outskirts of Warsaw. Overnight stock, part-time. It paid just enough to keep the lights on. Humbling? Completely. But desperate people don't think about dignity. They think about survival. The store, looked different at night. Hollow, echoey, like a half-dead machine humming in the dark. Fluorescent lights flickered in places. Security cameras had blind spots you could drive a cart through. Most nights it was just me, Tomasz, a college kid trying to pass time, and Igor, an older guy who didn't talk much. Quiet as wallpaper. Zosha started coming on Thursdays, said she couldn't sleep without me and brought her grating to pass the time. She'd sit in the break room sipping machine coffee while I stocked towels and frying pans. It felt harmless, quiet, until the night everything changed. Thursday night, around 2 a.m. I was alone in the home section unpacking bath mats. Zosha was reading in the break room, probably on her second coffee. Then I heard it. A slicing sound, tape being cut. Then muffled laughter. And something heavy dragging across the linoleum. It was coming from aisle 22. Sporting goods. No one was supposed to be working there. At first I froze. I thought maybe Tomasz was messing around. He was young, like scaring himself with horror stories and stupid dares. But he was supposed to be in electronics tonight, and this wasn't his kind of joke. The sound was wrong, sharp, intentional. Not someone knocking over a shelf or dropping a box. This was quieter, focused, and that laugh, it didn't sound like him. I picked up my inventory scanner and held it like it meant something. Cheap plastic and a barcode reader, but it made me feel less empty-handed. I walked slowly, trying not to let my work boots echo. Aisle 22 stretched out in front of me, darker than it should have been. Half the overhead lights were out. I stepped in and immediately saw Tomasz's vest, just laying there like he'd stepped out of it mid-sentence. That wasn't like him. He was a slacker, sure, but not careless. My eyes followed a mess of scattered gear, camping stoves, nylon sleeping bags, a tipped-over tent kit. It looked like someone had dragged it all toward the back. There were smudges, too. Dark streaks, on a low shelf near the floor. Greasy, almost reddish. I didn't want to believe they were blood, but my brain connected the dots before I could stop it. Then another sound. From the stockroom behind the aisle. A low laugh. Human, but broken. Like someone trying to fake it and failing. I turned on my heel and ran, full sprint, down the corridor and straight to the break room. Zosha looked up, startled. "What's wrong? We need to leave. Now." She didn't argue. That's the thing about being married to someone for 10 years. You don't need explanations when the fear's already in their voice. We bolted down the front aisle toward the exit, then they stepped out. 3 of them, all in red Target uniforms, but I didn't know their faces. One had a box cutter, another dragged a rolling bin, heavy, thudding on the tiles. They looked at us, not confused, not surprised, just watching. We ran like hell. The doors opened slow, too slow, but we got out. My car was parked near the garden center. I unlocked it as we ran, keys shaking in my hands. We slammed the doors shut, locked them, and didn't look back until we were halfway out of the lot. I drove for 10 minutes before either of us said a word. My hands were white on the steering wheel. Zosha's breathing sounded loud in the silence. When I glanced at her, she was staring out the window, jaw clenched. "Who were they?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." The next morning I called Target, lied and said I was sick. By noon I quit over the phone. The manager didn't ask why. A week later, Tomasz was reported missing. His car was still in the lot. His phone was found in the break room, dead. No texts, no calls, just a half-finished game of solitaire open on the screen. Igor was gone too. He never clocked out. No one heard from him again. We called the police. So did others. Target told them it was a workplace dispute. Said there was no footage from that night, camera malfunction. Nothing suspicious. I didn't sleep much after that. Neither did Zosha. She wouldn't even drive past the store anymore. Said she felt sick every time we got near it. My bank account dwindled. Freelance gigs weren't enough. Creditors called daily. I tried to focus, to fix things, but I'd wake at 2 a.m., drenched in sweat, thinking I heard tape ripping. or laughter, or that slow, dragging sound, the kind that doesn't stop even when you close your ears. They never found Tomasz or Igor. The cops eventually filed it under voluntary disappearance, said the stress of night work and school probably pushed Tomasz to run off. Maybe Igor too. No foul play. No open investigation. Target sent me a final paycheck and a generic thank you letter. No mention of that night. No apology. Just silence. Zosha tried to move on. She went back to work, stopped talking about it, but she started checking the locks. Every night, sometimes twice. We got a dog, a mutt from the shelter. She said it made her feel better. I didn't argue. Me? I unraveled slowly. I stopped applying for jobs. What was the point? I couldn't stay awake during the day. Couldn't concentrate. Every sound, every knock, every footstep in the hallway made my pulse spike. I started drinking. Just a little at first, then more. Enough to sleep without dreaming. Zosha found me one night in the kitchen, sitting on the floor, holding a box cutter from the junk drawer. I don't even remember getting it. I wasn't going to hurt myself. I just needed to feel in control of something. She cried. I didn't. That was the moment I knew I was gone. Not dead. Just not the same man who walked into that store 6 months ago. Whatever lived in aisle 22 that night took more than Tomasz and Igor. It took certainty, safety, sanity. It took sleep. I see them sometimes, in window reflections, in passing buses. Men in red vests dragging bins too heavy to be boxes. I know they're not real. Probably. But at night when the world is quiet and the lights are low, I still hear it. The flick of a blade opening, the slap of rubber wheels on tile, and always, always, that laughter, not loud, just enough to remind me it happened, that it's still out there, waiting for the next shift. It's strange, the things we do just to scrape by. I used to think my life would look different by 28, photojournalism gigs in Prague, covering protests, concerts, even war zones. Instead, I was clocking in at 11 p.m. sharp, wearing a red vest, and unloading pallets of HDMI cables in a nearly empty Target on the edge of Brno. I never meant to end up here. My degree in photography came with a mountain of debt and almost zero job security. I tried freelancing for a while, portraits, weddings, even some crime scene work for a local tabloid, but it wasn't enough. I needed something steady to keep the lights on. That's how I landed the night shift. Just me and one other guy, usually a bored teenager or someone avoiding life, like me. My girlfriend Teresa left a few weeks before all this happened. She said I'd changed, said I was paranoid, obsessive, always talking about how something felt off in the store. And maybe she was right. I'd started noticing little things, doors unlocking on their own, shelves restocked without anyone touching, them in that freezer section. Always too cold, like the thermostat was stuck in January. The worst part was the quiet. That silence you only hear after midnight, when the world forgets you exist. Just the hum of the lights and the sound of wheels rolling on linoleum. That night, Tuesday just after 3 a.m., I was stocking wireless earbuds in aisle 9. I remember because I was humming to myself to keep the boredom away when I saw him. A tall, gaunt man standing at the end of the aisle. He wore a Target vest like mine. Pale skin, hollow eyes, the kind of guy you'd cross the street to avoid, even in daylight. He looked at me and said, "Do you know where the power banks are?" I blinked. "Right here," I said, pointing to the end cap display. But he didn't look, just kept staring. "No," he whispered. "The good ones, in the back." And that's when everything started to fall apart. I took a step back, instantly uneasy. Something about him, it was all wrong. His movements were stiff, mechanical, like someone pretending to be human. His name tag was faded, the lettering almost rubbed off completely, as if it had been worn for years without replacement. You work here?" I asked. My voice cracked a little. He didn't answer, just stood there, his head tilted slightly like a broken doll. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out instinctively, grateful for a distraction. A text from my manager, Elena. "Who's working electronics? We don't have anyone scheduled there." I reread it twice. My heart started pounding. I looked back up, but the man was closer now. Too close. "You should check the storage room," he said softly. "I left something for you." Every part of my body screamed to run, but I stayed frozen. I reached under the display counter and pressed the silent alarm button, hidden beneath a panel. It didn't make a sound, but I hoped someone somewhere saw it. The man smiled, a slow, unnatural grin that didn't touch his eyes. His teeth were gray, crooked, rotten. "Too late," he whispered. Then the lights flickered, just for a second, but long enough for the aisle to plunge into shadow. When they came back on, he was gone. Just gone. No footsteps, no sound, no trace. Stood there for what felt like an hour, breathing hard. I checked every aisle, peered behind displays, even walked to the loading dock. Nothing. I radioed my coworker, Thomas, but he didn't answer. His cart was abandoned in produce, halfway, stocked. The air felt thicker somehow. Heavy. Still. When the police finally arrived, 20 minutes after I tripped the alarm, they found me pacing in front of the customer service desk, eyes wide, hands shaking. I told them everything. They searched the store. No stranger, no footprints, no broken locks. Just me, talking to someone who wasn't there. I thought the police might take me seriously. After all, I wasn't some drunk kid or conspiracy nut. I gave them a name, well, a description, a location. I even told them about the weird message from my manager. But the cops just exchanged looks. One of them, a younger guy, tried to reassure. "None of these late shifts mess with your head, man. Maybe you nodded off, dreamed it." But I knew what I saw. The man was real. The next day, Elena called me in. She wasn't angry, just tired, annoyed. Said she had to file a report with corporate. Said the footage showed me pacing and talking to no one. I asked to see it. She refused. Said it was internal only, for liability reasons. 2 days later, I was suspended without pay for causing a disruption and wasting emergency resources. That night I drank. A lot. Slept through the next morning, phone on silent. When I finally checked my messages, I had one voicemail from a Brno detective. They'd looked into the man I described, cross-referenced the employee roster, found a match. His name was Adam Crowell, former stalker, worked nights. He'd gone missing 6 months earlier, vanished during his shift, never clocked out, no exit footage, nothing. Then, 2 weeks later, they found his body in the walk-in freezer, dehydrated, locked from the inside. The coroner called it a freak accident. Store management paid his family off quietly. It never made the news. I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. Check the back. Was that where he died? Was he trying to warn me, or worse? Was he luring me? I started digging. Found an old employee forum. Buried threads about strange noises, lights turning off, items moving on their own. One post just said, "Don't work past 3 a.m., not after what happened to Adam." My blood ran cold because I realized I wasn't the first to see him, and I probably wouldn't be the last. I didn't go back to work. Didn't even try to appeal the suspension. I knew they wanted me gone, and honestly, I didn't want to set foot in that place again. But the silence at home was worse. With no income, the bills stacked up fast. I missed rent, got the notice. Teresa didn't return my texts. My friends stopped calling. I'd become that guy, the one who lost his mind in a grocery store. I spent my days in sweatpants scrolling through message boards and old HR leaks, trying to find something, anything to prove I wasn't crazy. The deeper I went, the more I found photos of strange shadows, unexplained disappearances in other 24-hour stores. It wasn't just Brno. I became obsessed. Every night around 3 a.m., I drove back to the parking lot. I didn't go in, just sat in my car and stared at the automatic doors. Sometimes they'd open, just slightly, as if someone on the other side had triggered them, but no one was there. One night I brought my camera. I waited. I watched. Around 3:17 a.m., same time as before, I saw movement in the electronics aisle through the window. A tall shape, pale, red vest. I snapped a photo. Checked it, empty. The frame showed nothing, not even a blur. That was the moment I started crying. Quietly. Not out of fear, but out of frustration. Out of knowing no one would believe me. Not ever. But I knew what I saw. I knew he was still in there. Waiting. Live with my parents now. Not proud of it, but it's all I've got. They keep asking when I'll apply for new jobs. I tell them I'm not ready. That I'm between things. What I really mean is, I can't function like other people anymore. Because now, when I walk past any target, the automatic doors hesitate. Like they're waiting for someone else to step through first. Like he's still pacing those aisles. Sometimes I dream I'm in the freezer. The door closing behind me. The lock turning. The air freezing in my lungs. I wake up gasping. But the worst is the whisper. It started about a week ago. Only at night. Only around 3:17. It comes from the kitchen, or the hallway, or the other side of the bathroom mirror. A low voice. Familiar now. You should have checked the back. I tried recording it. Nothing shows up, but I hear it. I'll always hear it. And deep down, I think, I will check the back someday. Not because I want to, but because I have to. Because he's still waiting. And some part of me believes he doesn't want to be alone anymore. The first time I applied at Target, I lied and said I loved overnight shifts. Truth was, I had no choice. My mom's insulin wasn't cheap, and my brothers needed school supplies. After my dad's fall at the site, he broke 3 ribs and lost. His right eye, everything changed. I picked up shifts wherever I could, mostly nights. I'd stock shelves, sweep messes no one would notice, eat crackers on my 10-minute breaks, then come home to heat leftovers for breakfast and give Miguel his insulin. I didn't mind the work, not at first. What bothered me was the silence, that eerie stillness around 3 a.m. when the lights buzzed and you realized no one would hear you scream. Not over the hum of the fridges or the auto announcements still looping from the day shift. That's when I first noticed Greg. He was a daytime stalker, maybe mid-30s, always wore the same gray hoodie under his vest. Smelled like menthols and desperation. He'd linger during shift overlaps, hovering by the restrooms or just getting something from the back long after his time was up. At first, I was polite. Told myself he was just awkward. Called him sir, out of habit. But the way he looked at me, like he knew some secret about me I didn't, made my stomach twist. One night he cornered me by the family restroom, joking that I owed him a smile for letting me pass. That was the first time I reported him, quietly. To my shift lead, Dan just shrugged and said, "Greg's weird but harmless. He doesn't mean anything by it." After that, I stopped reporting things. I just kept my head down, did my job, and prayed my brothers didn't wake up hungry. But then came that Wednesday. The one that started like any other. The one where I would finally learn just how much this store didn't care about me or anyone like me. It was 3:45 a.m. when I realized something was wrong. I was heading toward the back of the store trying to clean up before break. I'd just finished zoning the detergent aisle when I felt that buzz under my skin, that weird sensation like someone's watching you through glass. And then I saw it. A long shadow stretching from behind the paper towel display. It shouldn't have been there. Greg wasn't scheduled for night shift. He had no reason to be in the building, but there he was. "Need an escort, Mommy." His voice floated over like he thought it was charming. I forced a laugh. My throat felt tight. "Just washing up before break," I said, hand already on the family restroom handle. I knew the lock was broken. It had been for months. I'd filed 2 maintenance requests. Nothing. I stepped inside, hoping I could wash my hands, splash some water, breathe. The door clicked shut behind me. Then, Another click. The deadbolt. Sliding into place, I spun around. Greg stood by the sinks holding a box cutter. His stance wasn't aggressive, but that almost made it worse. He just leaned there, tapping the blade against his palm like it was part of his hand. "You're always so nice to everyone," he said, "but you never save any sweetness for me." I backed up until I felt the cold of the hand dryer against my spine. "Shift manager's looking for you," I said. It came out too fast, too fake. Greg just smiled. "Not for another 27 minutes?" Looked around, scanning for anything. A phone, a camera, hell, even a plunger. That's when I remembered the plumbing access panel behind the trash bin. It had been loose since the winter flood. I took a breath, a real one, and I kicked. The panel gave way on the second kick. Greg yelled something, I don't remember what. I was already gone, running through the back corridors, past the mop closet, past the silent alarm switch I knew no one would answer. I didn't stop until I reached the loading dock. Sometimes, if I was lucky, there'd be a trucker out there smoking. Not tonight. Just metal pallets stacked 6 high and a breeze sharp enough to sting. I wedged myself between 2 racks and sat there shaking, arms over my knees, breath fogging in the dark. At some point, the intercom turned on. "Luz Rivera, please return." To soft lines. The voice was warped. Greg's voice. He knew the codes. Probably from his day shifts. Probably just waiting for a reason to use them. I didn't move. I stayed there until the sun came up and the first morning shift pulled into the lot. When I finally walked back inside, I passed Dan in the break room. He blinked at me. "Where have you been?" he asked, sipping from a dented thermos. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because I knew what would happen. I'd report it. Again. They'd roll their eyes. Again. So I said, just needed air. Later that day, I checked the schedule. Greg moved to days, me? My next 3 shifts were gone. Budget cuts, HR said, not meeting my eyes. That was the day I knew. This place wasn't going to save me. It never had. After they cut my hours, everything spiraled fast. Rent was already overdue. My mom was rationing. Her meds again. Miguel started skipping insulin shots, pretending it didn't matter. I caught Diego crying when he thought no one was watching. And me? I carried pepper spray now, kept it clipped inside my vest pocket just below my name tag. At work, things got worse. The stock boys, ones who used to joke around, started brushing. Too close. Touching my back, by accident. Whispering things I didn't want to hear. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Greg had poisoned the air. Then one night I found something in my locker. My name, written in Sharpie. Below it, a phone number. Greg's. That was the last straw. I walked into HR and demanded they take it seriously, that they look at the cameras. The woman at the desk blinked slowly. "You know those haven't worked in months, right?" she said, sipping her latte. I quit that day, handed in my badge. Didn't even stay for the exit interview. I found a job at the Dollar Tree 2 weeks later. Less money, less hours, but no Greg. Still, every time I heard a box cutter blade slide open behind me, my stomach dropped. Every single time. I don't tell people what happened, because if I do, they'll say things like, "You should have reported him. You probably misunderstood." Maybe don't be so nice next time. They never say, "That shouldn't have happened." They never ask, "Why didn't anyone stop him?" When I finally told my manager at Dollar Tree, she nodded and handed me a new box cutter. "Just don't let it slow you down," she said, like that was the whole lesson. I still think about that restroom, about Greg's voice echoing from the intercom, about how scared I was and how no one cared. But the worst part? It wasn't Greg. It was the manager who moved his shift instead of firing him, the HR rep who called it a misunderstanding, the co-workers who watched and said nothing. They were the real shadow in that store. That's the thing people don't get about horror. It's not always the thing in the dark. Sometimes it's the people who turn on the light and still walk away.